Hello to all of my lovely death disciples and or students of magic. I am the Shattered Reaper and or the Silver Witch. Well, I'm both at the moment because this is going to be on both of my channels. So, for this day, I know you are all enjoying a nice, wonderful dinner, enjoying some lovely family time, and that you are all having a good time. But I would also like to take a moment, if at all possible, to be able to share my own thoughts and share my own experience in, not necessarily what Thanksgiving is about when it comes to how we celebrate, but I do want to take a moment to talk about what it is that we can do to at least make a positive impact or a positive change when it comes to this holiday. So, as many of you know, this holiday originally is meant to celebrate the works of Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer that was employed by the Spanish Empire after the Inquisition and the Reconquista, and explored the West in order to find a trade route to India. But as it turned out, he ended up finding the Americas, and we kind of understand that there were a lot of horrible things that went on afterwards. And of course, this eventually led to what many people, especially in America, celebrate as one of the founding events that led to the founding of America. And the idea that this was the moment where America could begin to have the freedoms that it employs, or anything of the sort. But at the expense, however, it also was at the expense of a lot of Native American nations, and many of them that we have interacted with have ended up in a lot of terrible situations. One of the moments that I remember being was about the Cherokee Confederacy and how they lost their land due to Georgia realizing that the Cherokee had a lot of gold on their land. And so the Cherokee was pleading with a lot of Americans and even took their case to the Supreme Court to have their nation be treated as an independent nation that is equal to the American federal government, instead of it being something where the state of Georgia would decide what to do with it. And the Supreme Court actually did agree that the Cherokee Confederacy deserved to have recognition on the federal level. But unfortunately, Andrew Jackson, who was the president at the time, decided to ignore them instead and leave the Cherokee to the mercy of the Georgia militia. And the Georgia militia basically made the ultimatum to tell the, at the time, Cherokee chieftain to either leave and go to this designated plot of land far in North Dakota where there is nothing, or be subjugated to the militia and their attack. And many Cherokee had actually decided to stay until they were forced out by the militia. And this led to the event that would soon be known as the Trail of Tears. And this is a horrible event that we all must remember, along with many other events that involve Native American history. And I would also like to take a moment as well to simply just say, even if you are not Native American, that these are events that do affect us. And there are also many other indigenous people around the world that have been subjected to these kinds of crimes against their independence, against their cultural identity, where they have lost their land. Many people have died because of the subjugation by colonial nations, and sacred sites have been tarnished, and cultural heritages have been removed from many native peoples across the globe. And I think it is important to remember that we remember that this holiday is a reminder not of just what has been going on in the colonization, but also how it has negatively impacted people, and that we should remember who was negatively impacted, how heavily negatively impacted they were, the things they had to endure, the suffering they had to go through. And a lot of these events have been making public eye in recent years, with the schools that involve Native American children being taken from their families and having their cultural identity being removed from them, and even to the point of where we have seen makeshift graves and the bodies of long dead Native children being discovered at these school sites. And I think it is important that we remember these crimes, that we take our time to learn a little bit about Native history, and that it is actually, in fact, that it is a part of the idea that of not just being a witch, not just being somebody who cares about cultural or historical integrity, but simply just because we would not want that same thing to happen to us. So therefore, we should take issue when it is happening to other people unjustly and unfairly, and especially when we are supposed to take pride in a nation that values integrity and freedom, as America is supposed to. But when it doesn't, we need to call that out. We need to have these things known, and we also need to understand how it still affects us to this day. And today, we still have many different things that Native American groups and First Nations have still been undergoing, with a lack of resources, a lack of being able to have even ownership of their own land. There are still many struggles going on for Native Americans to properly honor their land, to properly have any sort of connection to their land, whether it be in Hawaii, whether it be in any of the mainland First Nations, whether it be anywhere really. I think it is important that we take into account that we don't just we don't try to honor somebody who has taken so much as a hero. We do not honor somebody like Christopher Columbus for the things that he did. We do not honor him because somehow he came up with the idea that the Americas exist. We always knew the Americas existed, since the Vikings, actually, since Leif Erikson. But what Christopher Columbus did, it was not because he was trying to look for exploration or that he was trying to make some great achievement. He was just there specifically out of greed, and it is something we need to remember, is that a lot of the things that we celebrate, that we used to celebrate, and some people who do celebrate, it is specifically because of the greed. The idea that people just sat around from different groups, that sadly, the myth that surrounds Thanksgiving was not the reality, is probably one of the saddest things that we have to realize. But despite the sadness that I have mentioned, I think it is something that we could actually help to bring into a reality, which is why in the description below, I am going to be showing a link to Charity Navigation, one that specifically links to Native organizations that are looking out for people who live under the First Nations, who are a part of the First Nations, so that we can celebrate the Indigenous people, so that we can show the compassion that they have not been able to get, that they have not been able to receive when, because of all they have lost and for what they still struggle with, that we can at least show some compassion, that we can show some care, and that we can show some form of working towards the equality, the care and compassion, the family that the myth tried to tell us before as a way of trying to hide what really happened. Instead of using it as a way of hiding what happened, what I want to help is to acknowledge the history that we have, but also try to make it so that we can work more towards a family, so that we can work towards being able to have an equal, a responsible, a civil peace where it isn't one side taking from the other, like it has been for centuries in America. What I would like is for the lie that has been told to be made into a reality, not just something to pretend these terrible things didn't happen. What I'd like is for us to acknowledge these terrible things that did happen, but to also use them so that we can remember not to do those things again, and so that we can work towards a better way of coming together, and so that we can actually celebrate a proper Thanksgiving without having to deal with all of the things that we have done. I mean, in some ways we still would, but at the very least, we want to try and do things better. And that's what I hope to do. So, with that, I do want to leave you all with a happy Indigenous Peoples Day and to always learn something new about our history, to take the time to learn about the history and what has happened, but also use that so we can learn from them and so that we can help create a better future, so that we can better acknowledge what the crimes of the past were, but also work to overcome them and to help create a community of compassion and to help communities that are not doing so well and that we can work towards helping them. So with that, I leave you all with a farewell, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and that if you do feel like giving, or if you are able to give, that you check the link below so that you could help Native people who are Indigenous, people who have lost a lot, and so that we could help rebuild into something better. And with that, I wish to give you all a wonderful Indigenous Peoples Day. Bye.